You were here in 2005, right?
Yeah, we left. We left December of 2005.
2005. So since then, I mean, the Heritage Hall's been redone, McKay Center's been redone. You'll have to get a tour next time.
These are things I don't even know the names of.
Yeah.
So yes.
So this building didn't exist
Okay,
before.
got it. Yes. This is a great building, underground building. So very nice.
It's safe no matter what happens.
Very good.
But thanks for being down. I know you got a flight, so we're gonna get through your life. We're gonna talk for about 45 minutes, and then students, we're gonna open it up to your questions to ask Aaron directly, and then we'll close right about 7:45, 7:50. Maybe take some pictures if you can, and then we'll get you to the airport. Sound good?
Brilliant.
Let's go.
Okay.
So before we launch, so tell us what Box does in your words before we dive into your life.
So what we do is we try and transform the way that people work. And the way that we do that is we have built a platform that makes it really, really easy to store, share, work with, collaborate around all of your most important data. And so there's really two extremely important assets that any company has. It's their employees and people, and then it's their data, and it's the ideas and the intellectual property that they have either created or are going to create. And so we've built a platform to help them manage all of that data. And so whether it is General Electric that is, needs to collaborate across 100 different countries when they produce new products and they need to be able to deliver new products, or if it's just down the street, a movie studio that wants to be able to go produce a new movie, the need to accelerate how you work with content and information, whether it's a set of images, a video, a document, a presentation. How do you store and connect that to all of the important people in that business process? So that's what we do. We build the software for that. And we now work with about 240,000 companies, including about 99% of the Fortune 500 has Box within it. We work in a more sort of sanctioned way with about 40% of the Fortune 500.
Not bad. in only 8-9 years.
Yeah. So the past couple has sort of really ramped up. So it's one of these things where it sort of goes very slowly for about 8 years, and then all of a sudden, the right kind of trends align for your business model and for your market, and then as long as you're there to take advantage of it, then hopefully good things can happen from there.
Good. So I want to talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into how you developed and sort of originated the concept for Box, but just a little bit of background and history, since you're pretty close to these guys' ages. Where'd you grow up?
Where'd I grow up? Seattle, Washington. Any Seattleites here?
Go Seahawks.
Okay, the weather's way better down here, isn't it? Yeah.
And brothers and sisters, and what your parents do for work?
This is getting very personal. So basically, my parents were. Are you going to psychoanalyze me right now? Or something?
No.
Okay.
It's just always good to see.
So my parents, one was a teacher, the other was a chemical engineer, and my brother and sister, one's in technology, the other is a full-time mother.
Early jobs?
Well, I've never really been employed. So basically, mostly building websites, creating applications, doing various things to make money however I could, and I had 2 internships during college, so I guess that was the closest thing to a real job.
But before college?
Before college.
You did some things in high school, websites, build some things?
A lot of internet websites stuff.
But when you went to college, you didn't necessarily go for tech, you wanted to be Quentin Tarantino?
Correct. So basically, USC is very good at weeding out people that will not be good filmmakers, and I was one of those. So I applied to film school and did not get in. And again, they are really, really spot on with that. And so when I didn't get into film school, I decided that, okay, maybe making films isn't for me, and I could sort of see objectively why that was the case. But I still wanted to be in the media space. So I figured maybe if we could combine sort of what I had done a lot in high school, which was build websites and do internet experiences with passion for business, and then you combine the media space in there, maybe you throw all those things into a cauldron and sort of outcomes, maybe a career. And so I had tried to take a very sort of broad set of classes at USC, obviously something that USC is incredible at, so you can mix a lot of disciplines and take advantage of the different kind of experiences and domains that are out here. And then all the while was interning at Paramount Pictures, and then also at Miramax. And basically, I don't know if people have discovered this or not, but the entertainment industry is very unique. And so And so basically, through that experience, I realized that not only was I not going to make films directly, I probably also wasn't going to be able to work within the film industry just because it's a very complicated industry if you're not sort of the cousin or son or daughter of somebody that can help you kind of get ahead. And so, as the son of a chemical engineer, really didn't not have a lot of pull in the film biz. So went back to really the roots of kind of middle school and high school, and really focused on technology and built a bunch of websites that failed miserably, and then eventually we came up with the idea for Box.
So what did you see?
Was that the question?
Nope, it was
Great.
exactly. Leads me perfectly into the next one. You've done this before. So
I can see your screen. So.
We're in school, no copying. So where did the idea for Box originate? What did you notice in the market? It was part of a class that you had to analyze a market. And so tell us what you saw and how you sort of developed that concept at USC.
Yeah, so there's sort of three important things that all came together at once. So I was taking a business school class, I think by a professor, Professor Kovakovich. I don't know if he's still here that teaches things. Okay, good. And so basically there was a class on marketing. He teaches marketing. Yep. And one of the, I think, sub sort of groups was to do a sort of analysis of a market. And unfortunately I don't remember much of school, but one of the things was to analyze a market. And I'm sort of jumping ahead, but right before that, I was sort of exploring new ideas to go do. This was sort of middle of 2004, fall of 2004. And what was happening is at work, I was interning at Paramount Pictures, and at Paramount, I was one of the world's best people to file papers into cabinets. And so you got really, really good at this process of printing paper and scanning it and then copying it. And then I guess this is probably how Kinko's got started, but basically, so I had to file lots of paper in these cabinets, and then the digital technology they were using was this product called Lotus Notes. Fortunately, if you were born in the 90s, you'll never have to have heard of this. So congratulations. But basically, there's this thing called Lotus Notes. It was horrible to use, and it was really, really painful for sharing data and working with information. And then back on campus, when you're working between lots of different computers and lots of different locations, there was this thing called Levie Library. I don't know if that's still around. Sure. But you're working between lots of computers, the business school, and you're consuming and working with and sharing lots of data. And at school, I don't know what the latest on the tuition that you guys pay these days, but basically, back in the day, it was $40,000 or something. I'm sure it's like $90,000 today, but it was like $40,000, and somehow, I know it went to the football team and everything, but basically. Basically, the problem was they didn't seem to want to buy any servers, even though you're paying so much money for tuition. And so they gave you the IT team. Anybody from IT here? Okay, so I can say anything I want now. So the IT group gave you 50 megabytes of email space, and I think it would rotate. So every 6 months, they would delete all of your emails and files because clearly it was too expensive to buy some hard drives. So it was really kind of painful just to even do basic things. So actually, in many respects, the IT incompetence led to Box being developed. But so I guess I have to be thankful to some extent. But basically, what happened was between work where the technology was really painful, between classes where the technology was very painful, and then this serendipitous opportunity where I had a lot of free time. And by free time, I mean because it was a class. I could go study a market and try and get credit for studying this market. And so I chose the online storage industry. And so in that process of studying online storage, we basically realized that there were these companies that had existed in the late 90s, the year you guys were born. And so what happened was in the late 90s, there were these companies called XDrive and Driveway and all these websites that would let you store your files. But the problem was that they had launched at a point where it was way too expensive. It was way too cumbersome. The internet was too slow. We had these browsers that were horrible to use. And so they had just launched at the wrong time. And And so they emerged at a period of time where you just couldn't be successful delivering online storage or cloud storage at the time. And so we got really lucky because right at the moment that we could go evaluate the landscape was the moment when all these technology factors came together. And so we did this report on the landscape. And the idea wasn't, I don't think the idea was to sort of create a business, but it was to sort of evaluate a market. And through that evaluation, it became really obvious how much of an opportunity this was. And so that was why we decided to start Box.
And the market at the time was pretty fragmented. There was no one doing exactly, well, there were some early people, but you were on the early side. When and what led you to say, this is no longer an assignment for a class? This is going to be real. Was there something that triggered in your mind or an event that sort of led you to feel like this is something that's ripe for the taking?
I think they kind of came in parallel. To probably be fair, we probably eventually decided just to use the class as again a way to focus on the business, and so which was a great opportunity because again I got a free B-, and got to build a startup. So basically. That's a great grade for me. So what happened was it sort of, the first kind of few weeks they were kind of disconnected, and then they became very quickly connected, and then built a business plan, did the assignment, and then decided to start building the website from there.
And so you've been here 3 years. You formed.
It's actually only 1.5.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was our fall of our sophomore year that we started the company.
And so at what point does it go from class assignment to we are launching this? Was there anything that sort of...
It was, it wasn't like any kind of particular juncture. I had built a couple dozen services before, so it wasn't like a particularly huge leap. The biggest part is actually getting the domain name. So our first domain was called box.net. And the guy wanted like $100,000 or something, $40,000, something like that for the domain name. And so that was actually that was the only real leap was we had to work out a deal where we would pay him $500 a month for his domain name and then have the right to buy it if we eventually were successful. So that was probably that was the most expensive part of starting the company, was getting the name. And then we basically coded it up, got a couple friends, some contract development, and then I built the sort of front end and the interface. We launched it in February of 2005, and then basically from that moment forward, sort of 50% of my time was school. 50% of the time was building the company, marketing it, trying to get more customers, and then it was sort of full on startup mode.
Okay, so before we talk about you taking the leap and leaving, you were a competitor in our first business plan or business competition that had real prize money at stake. Mm-hmm. How did that go?
For who?
For you.
I think for you guys it was fine. For us, we were sort of bitter enemies for years after. So we lost. I think. I don't know how you ranked the bottom, but we were at the bottom. I think you only focused on the top people. So we basically didn't make the top part, and we lost. We were just talking about this offline. We lost to. I'm sure a great company. We lost to a thing that made things be. It was like a fire retardant spray to make things make them not be able to be kind of flammable, which I would buy today. I mean, if I knew how to buy it, I'd probably buy fire retardant spray. But so that won, I think, that year, and then I'm sure there were some other good companies, and then there was us, but to be fair, actually, I do fondly remember this because I've been conflicted about it for quite some time. The feedback we actually got was dead on. So a lot of you guys actually predicted a handful of things that we would run into. That ended up being quite astute, and I think what we did to hopefully resolve that was kind of what any entrepreneur or company has to do is you're constantly sort of pivoting and navigating around the competitive landscape and the things that get thrown at you, and I think you guys were very spot on for a lot of the initial competitive struggles that we had, but yes, so we lost that unfortunately.
You're off the hook, Lloyd. Lloyd was a judge. He's judged the competition every year, so I was just waiting for him to say like, yeah, you missed this one, but. Good
No,
advice.
I mean, I think you guys don't take equity in the winners, right?
No, we just
So,
give prize money.
yeah, it would have just helped us mostly. But
What would that $25,000 have done for you?
quite a bit, actually. We raised, we were talking about this also, we raised $80,000 as our first round of funding, and we sold a fourth of the company for that. So, and just to give you a sense of inflation, today, like a decent series, a seed round is like $500,000 to $1 million, and we raised 80,000. So things are a lot better for you guys. Take advantage of it. But yeah, that 20,000 would have. I mean, we probably would have been like $1 billion company within the first 6 months or something. So,
So talk about, I mean, this is a big decision. You're at this school, it's expensive. When you decide, tell us when you decided and how you decided to leave.
Actually, I'll tell you something funny.
And what your parents thought.
There's a very high correlation between the cost of the school and it not being a big decision to leave. So basically, that made it actually easier because I was starting to rack up debt. I was at this point in the curve where my personal savings had gone to a point where I was now going into debt mode. And so it was right at this moment where I was like, well, I could either get lots of debt or Mark Cuban had just written us a check and I could just drop out and then we could go work on Box. And so it was kind of right at this convergence of those two lines. But my parents, sort of freaked out a little bit, but it was probably more my co-founder's parents because my co-founder's parents were both lawyers, so they valued kind of deeply education and everything. And then my co-founder was at Duke. We went to high school together, and yeah, it was cool. We pitched Mark Cuban randomly over the internet. He wrote a $350,000 check, and then we basically. It was kind of crazy, actually. You don't do this anymore. Usually you wire money. It's sort of the normal thing to do. But he sent us a check we were living off campus right off of 28th Street. And so if that had gotten into the wrong hands, things could have been very different. So I'm sure there would have been a great A pie party or something. So basically, he sent this check, and we realized that maybe it would be time to really kind of focus on the company full time, and so we decided to actually leave school in the winter of 2005, late fall of 2005, and then move up to Berkeley and then build the company.
And so you get a check from Mark Cuban off a cold email, no introduction.
Yep.
And I also read somewhere that your partner put in $20,000, or you got $20,000. Where did that come from?
Well, we probably rounded up. I think it was probably 15,000, and that was my co-founder. So he was Mr. Moneybags, and he had won about $15,000 by playing online poker. So he was like really, really good at online poker. I always forget if it's legal or illegal to do online poker now. Is it illegal? Are we in the legal or illegal stage? Is it legal? It is? What? California. Yeah. Illegal? And what about North Carolina? Illegal. What about like Wisconsin?
And why do you know every state's
exactly.
laws on gambling?
Yeah. What?
Is legal.
Nevada.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Okay, so anyway, back in 2003 and 4, it wasn't illegal, and my co-founder was very good at it, and he would have like multiple screens and computer monitors, and he'd be playing like 6 games at once. And it's great because actually, he thinks about leverage, and so it's great because if you're playing 6 games at once and you win, 55% of the time or whatever, and you're a couple bucks at a time or $10, and you just go into the right pots. I mean, he basically just compounded his money, and again, back then $15,000 was a lot of money. So he basically put all of that into Box, and so he ended up funding the company for the first couple of months, and then that's when some angel investors and then Mark Cuban came in. And
so after Mark Cuban and the gambling winnings, what other VCs and prominent investors have joined Box since, and how much have you raised sort of in aggregate?
So we have been through many letters of the alphabet in terms of our fundraising. So we're at like, I literally don't even know the letter, or maybe like Series F or something like that. It's kind of ridiculous. We've raised about $500 million, and the reason for that is it is we are going after one of the largest markets in the enterprise IT world. And just to give you a sense, so enterprise IT spending annually is about $4 trillion. And enterprise software is about $320 billion or so. And so, because we help enterprises manage their most important assets, their data, that's one of the most sort of important kind of categories within enterprise software and enterprise technology. So, hundreds of billions of dollars are spent every single year on these IT systems that help enterprises manage their corporate information. And so it's very expensive to build out the technology, the support, the sales, the services to be able to go after these really, really large enterprises. And so that's why we've, over successive rounds, have raised that capital. But investors that you'd know of, Andreessen Horowitz, Draper Fisher Jurvetson, Bessemer Venture Partners. We have a few strategic investors like Salesforce.com, SAP, an LA investor in the music and media space. So we've sort of been able to find strategic investors and growth investors, all different forms of capital.
So, you go from when you started the company to now, and it sounds like one smooth sailing ride. And obviously in between that is 2008, 2009, 2010. Yep. Couldn't have been the best of times for an emerging company, critical time for Box. You were pivoting the company towards enterprise. Yep. in a market that must have been incredibly difficult to raise money. Yep. So can you, was there ever any doubt that you would make it? Did it come close? And as a founder, sort of take us through what that experience was like.
Yeah, so this is where our not award-winning business plan feedback was correct. So the challenge in our market was at the time, and it still is, but we've sort of responded to it strategically. The cost of storage has always declined fairly rapidly. That was actually one of the reasons why we decided to start the company was that we could make this more economical over time. Just to give you a kind of quick sidebar on that, when let's do a quick fun quiz. When we started the company, so this is 2005. How much storage do you think was in a hard drive, like one hard drive? So we build servers and we build sort of the storage infrastructure. How much storage do you think could fit into one hard drive? Just hard drive like this big.
What year?
2005.
2005? Was it 250 megabytes?
Well, who thinks they definitely know the answer? Who's committed? I heard something that was close enough. Half a terabyte, okay. How much? 80 gigs, okay. What, yeah? 120 gigs? So basically it was about 200 gigs was a hard drive. So we had to buy these 200 gigabyte hard drives. And today, the hard drives that we put into our infrastructure are 8 terabytes. So, and it costs the same amount of money because it's just about the density in each of these cycles. So it's a 40x cost improvement just in the past 10 years. So that's great, because anytime you have a business where the underlying raw unit of sort of raw material goes down by 40x every 10 years, you can do some really cool stuff. The equal effect of that is that is true of your competition as well. So the feedback that we got was Microsoft, Apple, Google, these guys would benefit from those trends as well and eventually give away this service for free, and which ended up being very true. And that it would be very hard as a startup to be competitive. And that's actually fully played out as completely the case. The unique thing that we really stumbled into and then took advantage of was, while the cost has gone down on the consumer side and on the raw material side, it turns out the complexity has gone up for enterprises. Because if you imagine a world of billions of devices that your employees are going to be accessing data from, if you imagine a world where you have to collaborate around the world, and you have to be able to share and move data through very, very kind of critical business processes globally, where there's an explosion of new sources of content and data that you're going to work with. All of these trends actually lead to a more complicated and more complex environment for products like ours, which then directly equate to a significant amount of value. So what we did, starting in about 2007, 2008, was actually focus the company on the enterprise market, where we would actually be able to take advantage of these same trends, but really focus on the software differentiation, where we could uniquely build a product that would marry sort of security and scalability and data control with usability and end user experience in a way that that our enterprise competition nor our consumer competition really had the competency to do. And that was what ended up happening. So in 2008, that got even more pronounced as a requirement because the sort of economic market changed. Raising money became a lot harder. We had to have an even crisper business plan. That business plan had already been kind of emerging and evolving, which was to go after enterprises. And so what we did was decide to kind of really double down in that period, focus on the enterprise. Now, the different challenge at that point was we were 23 and 22 years old, pitching investors that we were going to somehow go take on Microsoft and EMC and Oracle and IBM and collectively $1 trillion worth of sort of market cap. We thought we were going to go attack these guys and change how enterprises use technology. And so then we had another version of this struggle, which was a lot of investors. We had about 25 investors say no to us. And unlike a business plan competition, this is sort of like if they say no, then you don't have the money, and it's really then it's a big problem. And so we were very lucky because we got lucky that there was an investor that was equally sort of early in his career and was willing to forego the advice that his partners were giving him, which was that this space is going to be won by Microsoft. It's going to be really hard for an independent startup to win. He basically said, we think that this world is going to be different, and that it's going to be a company like Box. Maybe it won't be Box, but it'll be a company like Box that is able to really kind of create this new technology wave. And so he was able to make a bet on us, and that was how we ended up raising our $6 million Series B right in the middle of this sort of economic period of kind of difficulty.
So explain the financial model for the enterprise, for the platform that you're building. Who pays? How do you monetize it?
Oh, people are supposed to pay for this thing?
Yeah, exactly. Most startups do not have that.
So basically, it's fairly straightforward with one unique caveat, which is that our customers pay us on a recurring basis. So sometimes what that leads to is we're willing to invest kind of ahead of the curve because it's a recurring relationship with that customer. So we might spend $2 to acquire a customer that will pay us $1 the first year because we can measure that we're going to have that customer for 3, 5, 7, 10 years, hopefully in perpetuity. And so that creates a unique business model challenge because it means that we have to have venture capital that funds the sort of customer acquisition, and then we sort of rely on building a great customer relationship and great technology to maintain that relationship with the customer. So we've moved from a world where customers pay for all of their technology up front, which is the traditional IT model, to one where they're really paying for a subscription to that software. And then it's your job to make sure that your relationship is as strong as possible and that your software makes them as successful as possible. And then it becomes a very sticky and successful relationship. So the way it works is we have a free service that you can bring into the enterprise. You can download it now. You can start to use it on demand. We have 27 million users that have brought it into the workplace and are using it. At the same time, when you are a company like GE or Eli Lilly or Toyota, what you care about is less how much money does this service cost. You certainly care about that to some degree. You care way more about the security and sensitivity of your data. So for enterprise customers, it is much more critical to have a secure platform than a free platform. So we're able to build out really, really kind of high security, high robustness technology that we go sell to these large enterprises that then pay for a relationship and the better version of the software to help them manage their data and manage the security around it. And so that's what we have about 39,000 kind of enterprise customers that are paying for the service on an ongoing basis. And that's our business model.
It's sort of interesting because neither you nor Dylan ever really worked for a large enterprise, right? You've never worked in a traditional corporate environment.
Well, I interned at one, yeah. Don't take that away from me.
Yeah, summer internship. And you bet
it's on my LinkedIn.
You bet the company on building a new kind of enterprise software system that's all about how people work, how people collaborate. So what are some of the core principles at Box when designing new products and attracting team members?
So one of the insights that we got really lucky that sort of ended up being true, but we sort of bet on, because as a startup, what you do, the way it works as a startup is you're basically betting on some unique perspective and your belief that there's a lot of people in the world that don't understand something that's about to happen, right? Otherwise, if everybody did, then there wouldn't be room for your startup. So sort of fundamentally, at a minimum, you have to believe something that other people don't believe. And then the hard part of the startup is you have to be right and everybody else has to be wrong. So it's sort of, there are two kind of core factors that have to be true for you to win. You have to be right and you have to believe something that other people don't. And so one of the things that we believed that other people didn't at the time was that whether it was because there's a new generation entering the workplace, whether it was because there was a new set of devices that people were going to work from, whether it was because we wanted to collaborate much more easily across more teams and individuals we were sharing with, that there would be a requirement to have far simpler, far better technology to help you in the enterprise. And that was the bet. And the bet was that consumers would be using all of these great tools in their personal lives, and that they would have the exact same requirement when they went to the workplace around how the technology had to work when they were in business. And that was the bet. And so if we were wrong, what would have happened was, by the way, Austin, my voice is going to crack a lot. I don't know why. It's just a thing where I'm losing my voice because I'm talking so much. So it's not because I'm going through puberty. So basically, let me just open up a new water.
Yeah. Let's turn your mic a little bit so it's louder.
Please help me. Okay.
There you go. And you can turn him up a little bit so he doesn't have to work so hard.
Great. Now I'm going to whisper. So that won't help. I have to yell just because that's the only way I can talk. So
that's good. It's right there.
Okay. Which is also why I lose my voice. So basically, the bet was that we would be able to build software sustainably that was better, easier to use, more consumer grade than any of our enterprise competition. And the bet was that eventually enterprise, there's a role in an enterprise called the CIO. They're the Chief Information Officer. They control effectively all of the technology spend within a company. And the bet was, unlike what other people thought, we bet that CIOs eventually would value the user experience of the technology that they were enabling their employees to have. And that the past, where they didn't care about that, where they just gave you SAP or IBM or Oracle technology, the bet was that they would stop just sort of going with the typical and traditional vendors, and that eventually they would value user experience, and that as soon as the world valued user experience, we would have a unique point of view on the world that would end up being right, that would be sustainable, because it's a creative sort of advantage. It's the sort of usability and delight that you can bring into this very, very complex business problem of managing corporate information. And so we made that bet, and today, to sustain that, what we need is a different type of employee in the company, and that is either individuals that come from the consumer world that have decided for some reason that they want to go bring consumer-grade experiences and delight to the enterprise, or we need people that haven't sort of been trained to all of the sort of negative issues and problematic issues of the enterprise. So we need individuals that are willing to sort of reimagine what the world is going to look like. And so there's only really two types of people that work at Box. Either people that have never worked in the enterprise, and we have to go teach them about the enterprise, but they bring the consumer experience or a next generation sort of view of the world. Or we have to bring in individuals that are willing to drop everything that they ever imagined about enterprise software and sort of start from scratch and say, how are we going to go build sort of the future of the enterprise? And so those people might come from Oracle, they might come from IBM or Microsoft, but they have to be willing to sort of separate those past beliefs about how the industry worked. And so that's how we hire, that's the culture that we built up. Those are the only people that we can work with, because that is our sustainable advantage. Our sustainable advantage is not what we've done in the past, but our ability to continue to make great software in the future. And the only way you can do that is if you have people that can actually make that go happen. So
that's the best answer I think I've ever heard. That's an awesome answer. That's very well done.
Thank you. So Will Ferrell didn't have the same answer?
No, he did not.
Shocking.
But he kicked the ball into the audience,
okay.
So that was good.
You didn't supply me with a ball.
You mentioned workers. How many people now work at Box?
So we have about 1,100 people.
How has your role as CEO changed from 5-10 years ago to now, besides doing more of these talks?
Yeah. I'm not in class half the time, so that's how my job has changed. So what's interesting is, so I think one of the myths that is sort of important to sort of dispel is this notion of what an entrepreneur or what a CEO is, and all of the sort of criteria and factors that we think about when we think about someone who can go lead a company. We sort of, there's sort of this belief, and I had it for the first sort of 5 years, and I struggled with this because I needed to find my own identity and my own skills as a leader. And the myth is that you have to be good at management, you have to be good at leadership, you have to be good at decision making, you have to be good at fundraising, you have to be good at finance, you have to be good at product, you have to be good at all of these things. And I think that's a myth that ends up making it so entrepreneurs sort of struggle with their own sort of perception of what are they good at, what do they need to get good at, how are they going to run their business. And one thing that the Valley has done very well, Silicon Valley has done very well, is getting good at sort of balancing the sort of capabilities of individuals on teams, so you don't necessarily have to be able to be successful at every one of those functions. And I would say that so it's a really interesting example. So I think it was a class on organizational behavior. Is that what it was called? Sure. Okay. You guys teach that?
Sure.
Okay. So yet another class that I didn't do well in. So, but basically, as we were growing Box, I was sort of thinking back on our organizational behavior class, and I was like, I went to the class, I did the assignments, I did the multiple choice tests, and yet I'm not good at management. I'm not good at performance reviews. I'm not really good at sort of, slotting people into all these different roles or whatever. And it was this struggle at first where you didn't know, well, is that a core part of the job or not? And over time, I realized what I was fortunate enough to have mentors that helped me realize was your only job as an entrepreneur and as a founder is to make sure your company is successful. And that doesn't mean that you have to do all of the things individually and get good at all of the individual disciplines that make a company successful. It means that you have to be successful at recruiting the people that are going to be good at all those disciplines. It means you have to be successful at bringing together the different domains and different disciplines that are going to make you have a cohesive or coherent operation. Every company needs amazing managers. Every company needs amazing leaders. Every company needs amazing finance people. You can't short any of those activities. You can't have worst-in-class managers. You can't have worst-in-class finance people in charge of those functions. But what you don't have to have is an individual that is world-class at all of those things. And so what I've decided, and this was about 5 or 6 years ago, was I wanted to get really, really good at things like product, at things like making decisions about the future of the company, around things like how do we go work with our customers and how do we learn about the future and what they're running into and what they're dealing with. And that anything that I did to be a better manager, anything I did to spend time on performance reviews, any time I spent on learning, esoteric accounting, issues, was going to be time away from being world-class at product and being able to work with customers. And you just make decisions about what things are you going to focus on and what things are you going to get leverage from other individuals on helping you with. And so 5 years ago, we brought in a chief operating officer who was actually the person that would help complement the team and really develop all the management skills, the leadership development, the performance management, all of the things that we learned in organizational behavior, but the things that really do take a full-time job at managing and maintaining and continuing to optimize, and something that I wasn't going to be particularly great at or world-class at. And so it's interesting because it sort of feels strange when I have to answer that question, because I probably my job is not that different from when we had 4 employees. And it's because my job is to make sure that we are always operating like a startup. We're always thinking about the new trends emerging. We're always working with our best customers to learn about what's changing in their business. And so my job is to make sure that the same level of sort of hunger and drive and entrepreneurship that we had at 4 employees continues to be maintained at 1,100. But the only way you can do that is if you have an infrastructure and a team and a set of individuals that can help you get away with you personally maintaining that startup structure. So that's what I do.
And I can imagine, just listening to the way you think and the pace at which you think, I can imagine it's a pretty challenging work environment to keep up with you.
And is the reason that you're not listening to the way I talk just because of the voice? It's a joke because you said, don't worry about it, guys. Okay.
I'm
cool.
sorry, I missed it. I missed it.
It's not a big deal. My voice is so bad, so you said listening to what you think.
No, the way.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But so take us through. So you do keep a pretty frenetic pace in your life. Take us through a typical day in your routine. Times you work, what time you go to work, all this stuff.
Yeah. So there's sort of two modes that I'm in. One is off-site, and I'm off-site probably about 30 to 40% of my time now. And so, and it's not always very glamorous. So this is the glamorous part. I'm in Indianapolis. No offense to Indianapolis. I'm in Wisconsin. I'm in the sort of weird parts of Florida that you've never been to. So all these places in the country where there are large businesses, and so I spend 30 to 40% of my time on the road working with customers, learning about what's changing in their world, because we're past the point where we can imagine what our customers want from us, where we actually have to go spend time directly with them and learn how is it different to run a hospital from an agriculture business, from a life sciences company, from a manufacturing giant. And it is very different, even though there's patterns across the technology that are shared across all of those companies. So about 30 to 40% of my time is on the road, which basically just means that you're in meetings all day, you're at a lunch with customers, and then you go to the hotel and you pray that they have room service, and then you just start the day again. And so that's on the road. And then when we're at the office, one of the other benefits of being the CEO who kind of can do what they want a little bit is you get to set your own hours. So I generally come into the office around 10:30 a.m. And then that was one part that was really painful about school is you guys, I don't know why you let classes happen before 10:30 a.m. But that also became a real challenge because we'd be working until like 4 or 5 a.m. and then you realize you have a class at 8:30 because apparently that's when professors wake up. So basically get into the office at 10:30 and do. I'll just show you, and then you can relay this to the group, so you can validate. So this was my Monday.
It is within every hour there are 4 entries per hour booked completely solid from 9 a.m. and then he's got something at 11 p.m.
So that's now there's a gap, and that gap is where I nap, and then also where I eat, and you have to have basic sustenance, and then I generally nap and then wake up, and then that's sort of me time. Maybe there's a phone call. I don't know what the 11 o'clock thing was, and then you just do it again. And so that's life at the office. And the reason for that is there's a product meeting, there's a design meeting, there's a partnership meeting, there's a new developer on our platform that's doing some cool stuff we want to learn about. There's a customer phone call. That's the work day. You take a nap, and then you go and think about the future. Maybe you develop a strategy for one of the industries we're going after. It's the time to sort of reflect on and really be able to process what's been going on, and then you do it again.
You're also a voracious reader. Why is that important?
Sort of twofold. One is the great thing about reading biographies and books about businesses, you realize that any horrible problem that you think you're running into, somebody else has run into, and they survived it. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a book on them. And so, so one is like it's just great. Actually, that's not even fully true. I've read a lot of books on just situations that you would not want to find yourself in as a business, like great company that no one will have ever used except for probably 5% of you. This company called Wang Computers, and then another company, a very similar company called Digital Equipment Corporation. And these companies had tens of thousands of employees in the 1980s and early 1990s. And then one shift in computing, the PC comes out, software changes, and then all of a sudden, these businesses are over. So sometimes you want to read those books just to be like, wow, you really don't have it that bad. But also to be able to learn from what was it about the trends that emerged that they missed? Why didn't they build the next generation of technology when they started to see those trends emerge? What in making sure that you can kind of connect your own sort of experiences and all the data that you're consuming and trying to see, is there any similarity to those patterns? And then, so it both helps you grow the business and also helps you make sure that you defend against being disrupted. And then it's just great to learn, as much as possible about what other people have historically been through that might have been in your shoes.
Great. This is our last question, and then why don't the students, if you can line up, there are 2 mics in the aisle here. So let's get some questions ready. Don't be shy. Get ready now. What drives you still? I mean, you doing pretty well, the company's doing well on growth. What sort of gets you and pushes you through some of the tough times you're talking about? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That part probably has changed. So one is to survive in the technology industry, you need a pretty significant but healthy amount of paranoia, and you need to fear that sort of anything can disrupt you, and sort of at the basis of building your company, you need to fundamentally believe that. And you don't have to, I mean, the simple test is that you shouldn't have to convince yourself about that. Like, if it's happening then naturally it's probably healthy. And you don't realize that at first. At first you're sort of like, well, if I'm so scared of this thing happening, maybe I'm not going to be able to get through this, or maybe I'm not as excited about the idea or whatever. And then you realize that is a healthy, that is a sort of healthy driver and influencer of decision making, of making sure that you're paying attention to all the right things. And then the part where it can be unhealthy is if you let it sort of consume you, versus making sure that it's productive, and that you're translating that into better business decisions, moving faster, et cetera. So one is that paranoia of we always have to move ahead. If we don't, then we will end up like one of these companies that got disrupted. So if you're not ahead of the market, if you're not ahead of the curve, then somebody else will be by definition, because there's a curve. And so you have to make sure that you're constantly going to stay ahead of where the industry is going. And then the other part is you, and this is an important thing to sort of double check as you're building a company, which is you have to be innately, or at least kind of deeply passionate about the thing that you're going after. And you can actually, you can build that passion over time. I think it's a fallacy to think that passion is going to be sort of with you completely on day one. You can sort of build a love for something that you did not know that you were going to love. But we didn't start as an enterprise software company. We grew to love it because of the amount of just intellectually interesting and stimulating experiences around when you learn about how a new drug gets developed, or a new cancer treatment gets created, or a new medical process is going to happen on your platform, or how a movie gets created, all those kind of things happening on your technology. That's the stuff that makes it very exciting and that you can be passionate about, even if you're not inherently passionate about the storage of files. And so what you want to do is make sure that you're doing something that you can continually be excited about, engaged in, but then also have a healthy paranoia to make sure that you're going to be doing and leaping forward in a way that is going to keep you ahead of the market.
I would have loved to see him as a student. I mean, I've never seen.
You probably wouldn't have seen me as a student, but I would have invited you to my dorm.
I mean, how many people just based about, you can't fake the energy and the authenticity of what you're bringing to this company. How many people, honestly, would go to work for Box right now, following him? Okay. Incredible.
Hopefully, everybody else would just start a company, and they're not like, no, I'd rather work at Google. Yeah.
Good answer. That's a fair answer, too.